Environment variables are a set of dynamic named values that can affect the way running processes will behave on a computer. They are part of the operating environment in which a process runs. For example, a running process can query the value of the temp environment variable to discover a suitable location to store temporary files, or the home or user profile variable to find the directory structure owned by the user running the process. They were introduced in their modern form in 1979 with version 7 Unix, so are included in all Unix operating system flavors and variants from that point onward including Linux and OS X. From PCADOS 2.0 in 1982, all succeeding Microsoft operating systems including Microsoft Windows and OS/2 also have included them as a feature, although with somewhat different syntax, usage and standard variable names. Details: in all Unix and Unix-like systems, each process has its own separate set of environment variables. By default, when a process is created, it inherits a duplicate environment of its parent process, except for explicit changes made by the parent when it creates the child. At the API level, these changes must be done between running fork and exec. Alternatively, from command shells such as bash, a user can change environment variables for a particular command invocation by indirectly invoking it via env or using the environment variable equals value command notation. All Unix operating system flavors, DOS, and Windows have environment variables. However, they do not all use the same variable names. A running program can access the values of environment variables for configuration purposes. Examples of environment variables include path, a list of directory paths. When the user types a command without providing the full path, this list is checked to see whether it contains a path that leads to the command. Home and user profile indicate where a user's home directory is located in the file system. Home/app name and update /developer name /app name for storing application settings. Many applications incorrectly use USERPROFILE for application settings in Windows. USERPROFILE should only be used in dialogues that allow user to choose between paths like documents, downloads, music. For programmatic purposes, updater, local updater or program data is used. Term specifies the type of computer terminal or terminal emulator being used. PS1 specifies how the prompt is displayed in the Bourne shell invariants. Mail used to indicate where a user's mail is to be found. Temp location where processes can store temporary files. Shell scripts and batch files use environment variables to communicate data and preferences to child processes. They can also be used to store temporary values for reference later in a shell script. However, in Unix, other variables are usually used for this. In Unix, an environment variable that is changed in a script or compiled program will only affect that process and possibly child processes. The parent process and any unrelated processes will not be affected. In MS-DOS, changing or removing a variable's value inside a batch file will change the variable for the duration of command.com's existence. In Unix, the environment variables are normally initialized during system startup by the system init scripts, and hence inherited by all other processes in the system. Users can, and often do, augment them in the profile script for the command shell they are using. In Microsoft Windows, each environment variable's default value is stored in the Windows registry or set in the autoexec.bat file. On Unix, a setuid program is given an environment chosen by its caller, but it runs with different authority from its caller. The dynamic linker will usually load code from locations specified by the environment variables $ld library path and $ld preload and run it with the process's authority. If a setuid program did this, it would be insecure, because its caller could get it to run arbitrary code and hence misuse its authority. For this reason, libc unsets these environment variables at startup in a setuid process. Setuid programs usually unset unknown environment variables and check others or set them to reasonable values. Use and display. The variables can be used both in scripts and on the command line. They are usually referenced by putting special symbols in front of or around the variable name. For instance, to display the user home directory, in most scripting environments, the user has to type. On DOS, OS/2 or Windows systems, the user has to type this. In Windows PowerShell, the user has to type this. The commands env, set, and contenv display all environment variables and their values. Assignment, env and set are also used to set environment variables and are often incorporated directly into the shell. Contenv can also be used to print a single variable by giving that variable name as the sole argument to the command. In Unix, the following commands can also be used, but are often dependent on a certain shell. Export variable equals value for bourne, bash, and related shells, setenv variable value for CSH and related shells. A few simple principles govern how environment variables achieve their effect. Environment variables are local to the process in which they were set. If two shell processes are spawned and the value of an environment variable is changed in one, that change will not be seen by the other. When a child process is created, it inherits all the environment variables and their values from the parent process. Usually, when a program calls another program, it first creates a child process by forking, then the child adjusts the environment as needed, and lastly the child replaces itself with the program to be called. This procedure gives the calling program control over the environment of the called program. In Unix and Unix-like systems, the names of environment variables are case-sensitive. In Unix shells, variables may be assigned without the export keyword. Variables defined in this way are displayed by the set command, but are not true environment variables, as they are stored only by the shell and not recognized by the kernel. The contenv command will not display them, and child processes do not inherit them. Variable equals value. However, if used in front of a program to run, the variables will be exported to the environment and thus appear as real environment variables to the program. Variable equals value program name, arguments. Environment variables persistence can be session-wide or system-wide. In DOS, OS/2 and Windows, the set command without any arguments displays all environment variables along with their values. True environment variables, Unix, $path, contains a separated list of directories that the shell searches for commands that do not contain a slash in their name. It is equivalent to the DOS, OS/2 and Windows %path variable. $home contains the location of the user's home directory. Although the current user's home directory can also be found out through the C functions getPuid and getUID, $home is often used for convenience in various shell scripts. Using the environment variable also gives the user the possibility to point to another directory. $pwd, this variable points to the current directory. Equivalent to the output of the command pwd when called without arguments. $display contains the identifier for the display that X11 programs should use by default. $ld library path, on many Unix systems with a dynamic linker, contains a separated list of directories that the dynamic linker should search for shared objects when building a process image after exec, before searching in any other directories. $lang, $lc all, $lc. $lang is used to set to the default locale. For example, if the locale values are PTBR, then the language is set to Portuguese and Brazilian practice is used where relevant. Different aspects of localization are controlled by individual $lc variables. $lc all can be used to force the same locale for all aspects. $tz refers to time zone. It can be in several formats, either specifying the time zone itself or referencing a file. DOS. Under DOS, the master environment is provided by the primary command processor, which inherits the pre-environment defined in configs when first loaded. Its size can be configured through the command /e, n parameter between 160 and 32,767 bytes. Local environment segments inherited to child processes are typically reduced down to the size of the contents they hold. Some command line processors allow to define a minimum amount of free environment space that will be available when launching secondary shells. While the content of environment variables remains unchanged upon storage, their names are always converted to uppercase, with the exception of pre-environment variables defined via the configsys directive set under Dr. DOS 6.0 and higher under drive DOS 7.02 and higher. In principle, MS-DOS 7.0 and higher also supports lowercase variable names, but provides no means for the user to define them. Environment variable names containing lowercase letters are stored in the environment just like normal environment variables, but remain invisible to most DOS software, since they are written to expect uppercase variables only. Some command processors limit the maximum length of an variable name to 80 characters. While principally only limited by the size of the environment segment, some DOS and 16-bit Windows programs do not expect the contents of environment variables to exceed 128 characters. Dr. DOS Command.com supports environment variables up to 255, for DOS even up to 512 characters. Since Command.com can be configured to support command lines up to 1024 characters internally under MS-DOS 7.0 and higher, environment variables should be expected to contain at least 1024 characters as well. In batch mode, non-existent environment variables are replaced by a zero-length string. Standard environment variables or reserved environment variables include %append%. This variable contains a semicolon-delimited list of directories in which to search for files. It is usually changed via the append/e command, which also ensures that the directory names are converted into uppercase. Some DOS software actually expects the names to be stored in uppercase and the length of the list not to exceed 121 characters, therefore the variable should better not be modified via the set command. Long file names containing spaces or other special characters must not be quoted. %config%. This variable holds the symbolic name of the currently chosen boot configuration. It is set by the DOS BIOS to the name defined by the corresponding configsys directive menu item before launching the primary command processor. Its main purpose is to allow further special cases in autoexec BAT and similar BAT jobs depending on the selected option at boot time. This can be emulated under drive DOS by utilizing the configsys directive set like setconfig equals 1. %combline%. This variable contains the fully expanded text of the currently executing command line. It can be read by applications to detect the usage of and retrieve long command lines, since the traditional method to retrieve the command line arguments through the PSP is limited to 126 characters and is no longer available when FCBs get expanded or the default DTA is used. While 4DOS supports longer command lines, Command.com still only supports a maximum of 126 characters at the prompt by default, but nevertheless internal command lines can become longer through FE. Variable expansion. In addition to the command line length byte in the PSP command line is normally limited by ASCII 13, and command lines longer than 126 characters will typically be truncated by having an ASCII 13 inserted at position 127, but this cannot be relied upon in all scenarios. The variable will be suppressed for external commands invoked with a preceding @ symbol like in @scopy. For backward compatibility and in order to minimize the size of the environment when loading non-relocating TSRs. Some beta versions of Microsoft Chicago used %combline% to store only the remainder of the command line accessing 126 characters instead of the complete command line. %compspec%. This variable contains the full 8.3 path to the command processor, typically C/command.com or C/DOS/command.com. It must not contain long file names, but under drive DOS it may contain file and directory passwords. It is set up by the primary command processor to point to itself, so that the resident portion of the command processor can reload its transient portion from disk after the execution of larger programs. The value can be changed at runtime to reflect changes in the configuration, which would require the command processor to reload itself from other locations. The variable is also used when launching secondary shells. %copy allows a user to specify the /y switch as the default for the copy, xcopy, and move commands. A default of /y can be overridden by supplying the /y switch on the command line. The /y switch instructs the command to replace existing files without prompting for confirmation. %discmd allows a user to specify customized default parameters for the dir command, including file specifications. Preset default switches can be overridden by providing the negative switch on the command line. For example, if %discmd contains the /w switch, then it can be overridden by using dir/w at the command line. This is similar to a facility to define default switches for dir through its /c or /r switches under drive doscommand.com. %discmd is also supported by the external sdir.com/. dir.com stacker commands under Novell DOS 7 and higher. %lang%. This variable is supported by some tools to switch the locale for messages in multilingual issues. %langspec%. This variable is supported by some tools to switch the locale for messages in multilingual issues. %nosep%. This variable controls the display of thousands separators in messages of various commands. Issued by default, they can be suppressed by specifying set nosep equals on or set nosep equals 1 under PCA-DOS. Dr. DOS additionally allows to override the system's thousand separator displayed as in FE. Set nosep equals %path%. This variable contains a semicolon-delimited list of directories in which the command interpreter will search for executable files. Equivalent to the Unix $path variable. It is usually changed via the path command, which also ensures that the directory names are converted into uppercase. Some DOS software actually expects the names to be stored in uppercase and the length of the list not to exceed 123 characters, therefore the variable should better not be modified via the set command. Long file names containing spaces or other special characters must not be quoted. By default, the current directory is searched first, but some command line processes like 4DOS allow .dot to be included in the list as well in order to override this search order. Some DOS programs are incompatible with this extension. %prompt%. This variable contains a $tokenized string defining the display of the prompt. It is usually changed via the prompt command. %temp%. These variables contain the path to the directory where temporary files should be stored. Operating system tools typically only use %temp%, whereas third-party programs also use %temp%. Typically %temp% takes precedence over %temp%. The Drive DOS family supports a number of additional standard environment variables including %beta%. This variable contains an optional message displayed by some versions of command.com at the startup of secondary shells. %drdoscfgopendosk%. This variable contains the directory where to search for ini and cfg configuration files, as used by the install and setup commands and various Drive DOS programs like diskopt, dosbook, edit, fbx, filelink, lock, security ovl nuliginx, cerno, taskmax, taskmgr, fumax, or undelete. It must not contain long file names. %comspec%. This variable optionally holds an alternative path to the command processor taking precedence over the path defined in the %compspec% variable, optionally including file and directory passwords. Alternatively, it can hold a special value of on, or 1 in order to enforce the usage of the %compspec% variable even in scenarios where the %compspec% variable may point to the wrong command line processor, for example, when running some versions of the Drive DOS SYS command under a foreign operating system. %drsys%, setting this variable to on, or 1 will force some versions of the Drive DOS SYS command to work under foreign operating systems instead of displaying a warning. %FBP user percent specifies the username used by the fast backup command fbx and user fb configuration files under novel DOS 7. %homedir percent, this variable may contain the home directory under drive DOS. %info percent, in some versions of drive DOS command.com this variable defines the string displayed by the $I token of the prompt command. It can be used, for example, to inform the user how to exit secondary shells. %loginame percent, in some versions of drive DOS command.com this variable defines the username displayed by the $U token of the prompt command, as set up by FE. Login scripts for novel NetWare. See also the similarly named sudo variable %loginame percent. %mdosexec percent, this variable can take the values on, or off under multi-user DOS. If enabled, the operating system permits applications to shell out to secondary shells with the DOS program area freed in order to have maximum DOS memory available for secondary applications instead of running them in the same domain as under DOS. %nokha percent, this variable can be used to define the character displayed by some commands and messages for no in, y, n, queries, thereby overriding the current system default. If it contains a string, only the first character, uppercased, will be taken. Some commands also support a command line parameter /y to automatically assume yes on queries, thereby suppressing such prompts. If, however, the parameter /y in is used to specify the yes/no characters, queries are not suppressed. See also the related configsys directive nokha and the environment variable %yeschar percent. %nasoned percent, setting this variable to on, or 1 will disable default beeps issued by some drive DOS commands in certain situations such as to inform the user of the completion of some operation, that user interaction is required, or when a wrong key was pressed. Command line options to specifically enable certain beeps will override this setting. %os percent, this variable contains the name of the operating system in order to distinguish between different DOS-related operating systems of digital research origin in batch jobs and applications. Known values include DOS+, CPC DOS 4.1, DRDOS, ISDOS, PalmDOS, and NetWare PalmDOS, NWDOS, NWDOS 7, OpenDOS, CDOS, CPCDOS, CDOS 386, DRMDOS, MDOS, REAL32. MS-DOS Intus looks for a value of DRDOS as well. See also the identically named environment variable %os % later introduced in the Microsoft Windows NT family. %PEXEC %. In some versions of drive DOS this variable defines the command executed by the $X token of the prompt command before command.com displays the prompt after returning from external program execution. %switchar %, this variable defines the switchar to be used for argument parsing by some drive DOS commands. If defined, it overrides the system's current switchar setting. The only accepted characters are /, and opening square bracket. See also the related configsys directive switchar and the %per% system information variable in some issues of drive DOS command.com, %taskmwindir %. This variable specifies the directory, where the Windows system need to be used by drive DOS taskmgr multitasker is located, overriding the default procedure to locate the file. %var %. This variable contains the version of the operating system in order to distinguish between different versions of drive DOS in batch jobs and in the display of the var command. It is also used for the $V token of the prompt command and affects the value returned by the system information variable %os version %. Known values include 1.0, 1.2, 3.31, 3.32, 3.33, 3.34, 3.35, 3.40, 3.41, 3.41t, 4.1, 5.0, 5.1, 6.0, 7, 7.00, 7.07, 7.21, 7.22 etc. %yeschar%. This variable can be used to define the character displayed by some commands in messages for yes in, y, n, queries, thereby overriding the current system default. If it contains a string, only the first character, uppercased, will be taken. Some commands also support a command line parameter /y to automatically assume yes on queries, thereby suppressing such prompts. If, however, the parameter /y is used to specify the yes character, queries are not suppressed. See also the related config sys directive yeschar and the environment variable %nochar%. $CLS%, this variable defines the control sequence to be sent to the console driver to clear the screen when a CLS command is issued, thereby overriding the internal default. If the variable is not defined and no ANSI console driver is detected, the drive dos command.com will directly clear the screen via int 10 hours AH=0 hour BIOS function, like MS-DOS PCA-DOS command.com does. A special \NNN notation for octal numbers is supported to allow the definition of special characters like ESC, as FE and set $CLS equals \033, 2J. To send the / itself, it can be doubled \\. $dir%, used by DOS+. $page%, used by DOS Plus for pagination control. $length%, used by DOS Plus to define the screen length of the console and lines. This is used to control in a portable way when the screen output should be temporarily halted until a key is pressed in conjunction with the /p option supported by various commands or with automatic pagination. See also the related environment variable $width% and a similar pseudo variable $rows%. $width%, used by DOS Plus to define the screen width of the console in columns. This is used to control in a portable way the formatting of the screen output of commands like dir/w or type file name. See also the related environment variable $length% and a similar pseudo variable $columns%. $slice%, used by DOS Plus for the time slice. $on%, this variable can hold an optional control sequence to switch text highlighting, reversion or colorization on. It is used to emphasize or otherwise control the display of the file names in commands like type wildcard, for example set $on equals \033, 1M with ANSI loaded, or set $on equals \016 for an IBM or ESCP printer. For the special \NNN octal notation supported, see $CLS%. While the variable is undefined by default under drive DOS, the multi-user DOS default for an ASCII terminal equals set $on equals \033p. See also the related environment variable $off%. $off%, this variable can hold an optional control sequence to switch text highlighting, reversion or colorization off. It is used to return to the normal output after the display of file names in commands like type wildcard, for example set $off equals \033, 0M with ANSI loaded, or set $off equals \024 for an IBM or ESCP printer. For the special \NNN octal notation supported, see $CLS%. While the variable is undefined by default under drive DOS, the multi-user DOS default for an ASCII terminal equals set $off equals \033q. See also the related environment variable $on%. $header%. This variable can hold an optional control sequence issued before the output of the file contents in commands like type under drive DOS 7.02 and higher. It can be used for highlighting, pagination or formatting, FE. When sending the output to a printer, that is set $header equals \017 for an IBM or ESCP printer. For the special \NNN octal notation supported, see $CLS%. See also the related environment variable $footer%. $footer%. This variable can hold an optional control sequence issued after the output of the file contents in commands like type under drive DOS 7.02 and higher. It is used to return to the normal output format, that is set $footer equals \022\014 in the printer example above. For the special \NNN octal notation supported, see $CLS%. See also the related environment variable $header%. Gem, OS/2, Windows, system path variables refer to locations of critical operating system resources, and as such generally are not user-dependent. %updata% contains the full path to the application data directory of the logged-in user. Does not work on Windows NT 4.0 SP6 UK. %localupdata%, this variable is the temporary files of applications. Its uses include storing of desktop themes, Windows error reporting, caching and profiles of web browsers. %comspec% per %compspec%, the %compspec% variable contains the full path to the command processor. On Windows NT-based operating systems, this is Commander EXE, while on Windows 9X and ME, %compspec% is the DOS command processor, command.com, %os%. The %os% variable contains a symbolic name of the operating system family to distinguish between differing feature sets and bait jobs. Under Windows NT, Windows 2000, Windows XP and Windows 7, it always holds the string Windows NT. It resembles an identically named environment variable %os% found in all DOS-related operating systems of digital research origin like concurrent DOS, multi-user DOS, Real/32, DOS+, Dr. DOS, Novell DOS and OpenDOS. %path%. This variable contains a semicolon-delimited list of directories in which the command interpreter will search for an executable file that matches the given command. Environment variables, that represent paths, may be nested within the %path% variable, but only at one level of indirection. If this subpath environment variable itself contains an environment variable representing a path, %path% will not expand properly in the variable substitution. Equivalent to the Unix $path variable. %program files %program files, x86, %program w6432%, the %program files variable points to the program files directory, which stores all the installed programs of Windows and others. The default on English language systems is C/program files. In 64-bit editions of Windows, there are also %program files, x86, which defaults to C/program files, and %program w6432%, which defaults to C/program files. The %program files itself depends on whether the process requesting the environment variable is itself 32-bit or 64-bit. %common program files this variable points to the common files directory. The default is C/program files /common files in the English version of Windows. %system drive the %system drive variable is a special system-wide environment variable found on Windows NT and its derivatives. Its value is the drive upon which the system directory was placed. The value of %system drive is in most cases C. %system root the %system root variable is a special system-wide environment variable found on Windows NT and its derivatives. Its value is the location of the system directory, including the drive and path. The drive is the same as %system drive and the default path on a clean installation depends upon the version of the operating system. By default, Windows NT 5.1 and newer versions use /Windows, Windows NT 5.0, Windows NT 4.0 and Windows NT 3.1 use /WINNT, Windows NT 3.5X uses /WINNT35, and Windows NT 4.0 terminal server uses /WTSRV. %WinDir This variable points to the Windows directory. If the system is on drive C, then the default values are C, /Windows on Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows ME, Windows XP, Windows Server 2003, Windows Vista, Windows Server 2008 and Windows 7 and C, /WINNT for Windows NT4, and Windows 2000. Windows NT4 Terminal Server Edition by default installs to C, /WTS of V. User management variables store information related to resources and settings owned by various user profiles within the system. As a general rule, these variables do not refer to critical system resources or locations that are necessary for the OS to run. A user's profile %. This variable expands to the full path to the all users profile directory. This profile contains resources and settings that are used by all system accounts. Shortcut links copied to the all users /start menu or desktop directories will appear in every user's start menu or desktop, respectively. User domain %, the name of a workgroup or Windows domain to which the current user belongs. The related variable, %login server %, holds the host name of the server that authenticated the current user's logon credentials. For home PCs and PCs in a workgroup, the authenticating server is usually the PC itself. For PCs in a Windows domain, the authenticating server is a domain controller. USERPROFILE a special system-wide environment variable found on Windows NT and its derivatives. Its value is the location of the current user's profile directory, in which is found that user's HKCU registry hive. Users can also use the %username variable to determine the active user's login identification. Optional system variables are not explicitly specified by default but can be used to modify the default behavior of certain built-in console commands. These variables also do not need to be explicitly specified as command line arguments. Default values. The following tables shows typical default values of certain environment variables under English versions of Windows as they can be retrieved under CMD. Some of these variables are also defined when running command.com under Windows, but differ in certain important details. Under command.com, the names of environment variable are always uppercased. Some, but not all variables contain short 8.3 rather than long file names. While some variables present in the CMD environment are missing, there are also some variables specific to the command environment. In this list, there is no environment variable that refers to the location of the user's My Documents directory, so there is no standard method for setting a program's home directory to be the My Documents directory. Pseudo environment variables, DOS, besides true environment variables, which are statically stored in the environment until changed or deleted, a number of pseudo-environment variables exist for batch processing. The so-called replacement parameters or replaceable parameters, also known as replacement variables or batch file parameters %1, %9 and %0, can be used to retrieve the calling parameters of a batch job, see shift. In batch jobs, they can be retrieved just like environment variables, but are not actually stored in the environment. Some command line processors support a type of pseudo-environment variables named system information variables or internal variables, which can be used to retrieve various possibly dynamic, but read-only information about the running system in batch jobs. The returned values represent the status of the system in the moment these variables are queried. That is, reading them multiple times in a row may return different values even within the same command. Querying them has no direct effect on the system. Since they are not stored in the environment, they are not listed by set and do not exist for external programs to retrieve. If a true environment variable of the same name is defined, it takes precedence over the corresponding variable until the environment variable is deleted again. They are not case-sensitive. While almost all such variables are prefixed with an underscore by for DOS etc. by convention, they are not under drive DOS command.com. In addition, for DOS, for OS2, for NT, and take command also support so-called variable functions, including user-definable ones. They work just like internal variables, but can take optional parameters and may even change the system's status depending on their function. System information variables supported by drive.doscommand.com, %ampm%. This pseudo variable returns the ante or post-midday status of the current time, FE, AM, or PM. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %day %. This pseudo variable returns the days of the current date in a two-digit format with leading zeros, FE. 0131. See also the similar pseudo variable %day %. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %day of week %. This pseudo variable returns the day name of the week in a 3-character format. The return string depends on the locale-specific version of drive.dos, FE. Sun, Mon, Tu, Wed, Du, Fry, or Sat in the English version. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %error level %, in command.com of drive.dos 7.02 and higher, this pseudo variable returns the last error level returned by an external program or the return command, FE. 0 inches 255. See also the identically named pseudo variable %error level % under Windows and the if error level command. %error %, in multi-user DOS as well as in drive.dos 7.02 and higher, this pseudo variable returns the last error level in a 3-digit format with leading zeros, FE. 000255. See also the related pseudo variable %error level % under drive.dos and the if error level command. %greeting time %, this pseudo variable returns the 3-level day greeting time. The return string depends on the locale-specific version of drive.dos, FE. Morning, afternoon, or evening in the English version. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %hour %. This pseudo variable returns the hours of the current time in 12-hour format without leading zeros, FE. 1 inch 12. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %hour 24%. This pseudo variable returns the hours of the current time in 24-hour format in a 2-digit format with leading zeros, FE. 0023. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. See also the similar pseudo variable %hour %. %minute %, this pseudo variable returns the minutes of the current time in a 2-digit format with leading zeros, FE 0059. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. See also the similar pseudo variable %minute %. %month %, this pseudo variable returns the months of the current date in a 2-digit format with leading zeros, FE. 0112. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. See also the similar pseudo variable %month %. %month name %, this pseudo variable returns the month name of the current date. The return string depends on the locale-specific version of drive.dos, FE. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, or December in the English version. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %nday of week %, this pseudo variable returns the number of day of the current week, FE. 1 inch 7. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %os version %, this pseudo variable returns the version of the operating system depending on the current setting of the environment variable %var %. If %var % is not defined, %os version % returns off. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts, which may return versions also for non-DOS versions of DOS. %second %, This pseudo variable returns the seconds of the current time in a two-digit format with leading zeros, FE 0059. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. See also the similar pseudo variable %second%. %short year %. This pseudo variable returns the year of the current date in a two-digit format with leading zeros, FE 93 inches 99, 0092. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %year %. This pseudo variable returns the year of the current date in a four-digit format, FE 1993 inches 2099. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in novel NetWare login scripts. %per %, in command.com of drive DOS 7.02 and higher, this pseudo variable returns the current switch R setting of the system either / or dash. See also the related configsys directive switcher and the environment variable %switcher %. %cadepage %, this pseudo variable returns the system's current code page, FE 437 inches, 850, 858. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the chcp command. %columns %, this pseudo variable returns the current number of screen columns depending on the display mode, FE 40 inches, 80, 132, etc. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also a similar environment variable $$width under DOS+. %country %. This pseudo variable returns the system's current country code, FE 1 inch for USA, 44 for UK, 49 for Germany, 20049 with ISO 8601, 21049 with ISO 8601 and Euro support. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the configsys directive country. %day %, this pseudo variable returns the days of the current date without leading zeros, FE 1 inch 31. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the similar pseudo variable %day %. %hour %. This pseudo variable returns the hours of the current time in 24-hour format without leading zeros, FE 0 inches 23. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the similar pseudo variable %hour 24%. %minute %. This pseudo variable returns the minutes of the current time without leading zeros, FE 059. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the similar pseudo variable %minute %. %month %. This pseudo variable returns the months of the current date without leading zeros, FE 1 inch 12. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See also the similar pseudo variable %month %. %rows %. This pseudo variable returns the current number of screen rows depending on the display mode, FE 25 inches, 43, 50, etc. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since drive DOS 7.02. See a similar environment variable $length under DOS+. %second %. This pseudo variable returns the seconds of the current time without leading zeros, FE 0 inches 59. This variable was originally introduced by 4DOS, but also became available with command.com since Drive DOS 7.02. See also the similar sudo variable %second%. System information variables supported by Drive DOS command.com with networking loaded, %login name%. This sudo variable returns the username. This always worked with NETX, but it will also work with Personal NetWare's ODIVLM if the current drive is a PNW map drive. See also the similarly named environment variable %login name%. %p station%. This sudo variable returns the physical station number in a format. The value depends on the MAC address of the network adapter, but can be overridden. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in Novell NetWare login scripts. %station%. This sudo variable returns the logical station number starting with 1 for the first client. The numbers are assigned by the file server and remain static for as long as the IPX connection remains established. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in Novell NetWare login scripts. %fullname%. This sudo variable returns the full name of the logged-in user, if available. It resembles an identically named identifier variable in Novell NetWare login scripts. See also the related sudo variable %login name%. Windows, dynamic environment variables are pseudo environment variables supported by CMD when command line extensions are enabled, and they expand to various discrete values whenever queried, that is, their values can change when queried multiple times even within the same command. While they can be used in baked jobs and at the prompt, they are not stored in the environment. Consequently, they are neither listed by set nor do they exist for external programs to read. They are not case-sensitive. Indirectly, they are also supported under Windows command.com, which has been modified to internally call commander.exe to execute the commands. %cd%. This pseudo variable expands to the current directory equivalent to the output of the command cd when called without arguments. While a long file name can be returned under commander.exe depending on the current directory, the fact that the current directory will always be in 8.3 format under command.com will cause it to return a short file name under command.com, even when command internally calls cmd, %cmd_cmdline%. This pseudo variable expands to the original startup parameters of commander.exe, fe. C, /windows/system32/cmdx. Under Windows command.com, this may return something like C, /windows/system32/cmdx/c. Due to the fact that command.com calls commander.exe internally. %context version%. This pseudo variable expands to the version of the command line extensions of commander.exe, if enabled. %date%. This pseudo variable expands to the current date. The date is displayed according to the current user's date format preferences. %error level%. This pseudo variable expands to the last set error level, a value between 0 and 255. External commands and some internal commands set error levels upon execution. See also the identically named pseudo variable %error level% under Drive DOS and the if error level command. %random%. This pseudo variable returns a random number between 0 and 32,767. %time%. This pseudo variable returns the current time. The time is displayed according to the current user's time format preferences. If the %time% and %date% variables are both used, it is important to read them both in this particular order in rapid succession in order to avoid midnight rollover problems. Critics. Some critics warn against overuse of environment variables, because of differences between shell languages, that they are ephemeral and easy to overlook, are specific to a user and not to a program. The recommended alternative is configuration files. See also, List of Unix programs, List of DOS commands, Special folder, Modules environment, PWB shell, References. A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V W X Y Con, Rex. Rawson, Tom. Paul, Matthias. Dye, Charles. Georgiev, Luchasa. For DOS 8.00 Online Help A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Paul, Matthias. NWDOSTIPs a Euro Tips and Tricks Rundown Novell DOS 7, mit Blick auf undocumented details, bugs and workarounds. DOSTIP. Retrieved August 6, 2014 and DOSTIP.txt is a comprehensive work on Novell DOS 7 and OpenDOS 7.01, including the description of many undocumented features and internals. It is part of the author's yet large DOSTIP zip collection maintained up to 2001 and distributed on many sites at the time. The provided link points to a HTML-converted older version of the DOSTIP.txt file. ABCDEFGHIJKLMN Paul, Matthias. Updated CLS posted FreeDOS dev mailing list. Retrieved August 6, 2014 ABCDEFGH Drive DOS 7.02 User Guide, Caldera, Incorporated, 1998, retrieved 2013-08-10A, ABC Paul, Matthias. How to detect FreeCom FreeDOS and Batch. FreeDOS Dev Mailing List. Retrieved August 6, 2014 Paul, Matthias, Deltree BATO 1.01 Extended File and Directory Delete, Caldera, Incorporated Dr. DOS 7.03 Watsnya.txt, changes from Drive DOS 7.02 to Drive DOS 7.03, Caldera, Incorporated, 1998-12-24 Leon, Peter. Environment Variables Considered Harmful. Retrieved August 11, 2014 Buckley, Andy. Environment Variables Considered Harmful. Retrieved August 11, 2014 External links, Environ, 7, a User Environmental Euro Linux Conventions and Miscellany Manual, Environment Variables Wiki, User Environment Variables in Windows XP.